Hey everybody, Steven here with Oddball Publishing, and for this video I wanted to start pumping out some videos that showcase some of the things that we actually had problems with where we had to learn how to do this stuff. So just sharing some of the knowledge with that. One of the big things was figuring out how to make sure that our margins were correct so that when we sent our book off to CreateSpace, they wouldn't kick it back to us and say that these particular pages didn't meet that standard. So I'm in Adobe Acrobat here. We edit everything in Photoshop, then we import it into Acrobat so that we can then put it in a PDF format so that we can send it off to CreateSpace, because that's one of the file formats that they accept. Now, I already cropped these, so I'm going to undo that, Control Z. So now the page is bigger with this. Now with this, with our tools here, Edit PDF is what I'm going to click on. Crop pages right here, and if I double click just a spot on the page really quick, it'll do it for me. There we go. It's usually up towards the corners. Alright, so once you have that, this is the set page boxes tab, but it's also just the information on your pages themselves. So with this, you can see the information on our pages. So our book is 5 1/4 by 8. Now with this, our pages actually have bleed for our images, so we actually have to make the size bigger, and that's because when they actually cut this down, they want to make sure that the images actually extend past the actual book size itself, or the page size itself. That way when they cut it, you don't actually end up with any weird white lines or anything like that on the book. So with that, we went up 1/4 on the 8, so it's 8 1/4, not 8. And then for the 5.25, we went up 0.125. So you're adding 0.125 by 1/4 to the size itself, which gives us that 5.377. It rounds up on this by 8 1/4. Now with that, they can cut that, and that'll actually trim that down to our actual size, and then our pages, our images, will go to the furthest extent of the page. With this though, they have text box margins with this, so we need to make sure, and they give you 2 separate ones. That's the text box margins if you have bleed and if you don't have bleed, because if you have bleed, you have to add that bleed spacing into that. And I know that gets really confusing. It took us a while to figure all this stuff out, a lot of phone calls to CreateSpace. One of the ways that I check this though, apply to crop box, which is what we're going to do here with that crop pages. For my text box margin, it's 0.375, regardless of the size of the book. If you have bleed on your book with your images, 0.375. This could be a 9 by 12 book. It's still going to have 0.375 margins for the text with this, with CreateSpace, right? It would be different if it didn't have bleed, but they give you all that information on their website. But let's check this real quick. We're going to go 0.375, and we're going to do that for all of these, right? So as we do that, we're actually going to crop all of these images to see if any of our text goes to the outside of that, because if it's cut off, we're going to have to adjust it. They're going to kick it back to you. So 0.375 on all of these, I'm going to apply to, so the page range here, I'm going to apply it to all of the images. Okay, so I'm going to do that right there, click OK, and now it's cut it down. What I'm looking for is, did any of these, like I said, text get cut off with this? I'm not worried about the image, right, because we have bleed, so I'm not worried about that. So for instance, our symbol here goes to the edge. I'm not worried about that because that's not text. Now for those that are going to watch this and that have been following along, you're actually going to get a sneak peek at some of our images that we haven't shown with this. So exciting that we get to share that with some people, but it's only people that are watching this video because we haven't put these out on social media yet. But once I start going through this book, you can see now if the text runs outside of this and it looks cut off, we're going to be in trouble with that. And so far with these, that's not an issue at all. But this is how we check to make sure that we're not messed up before we send it to create space, so we can get ahead of any of these corrections, right? So we're not only checking to make sure that the text doesn't get cut off, but one of the things that we did when I pulled up the crop pages part and we just looked at the page itself was to make sure that our sizing was correct. I go through all of these images to do that. That usually ends up being one of those things where they kick it back to us and it turns out, well, 2 pages just weren't sized right. We accidentally pulled up the wrong file for our template when we started making that page, and it just ended up being slightly smaller or slightly bigger than it needed to be, which throws off everything. So if the page is too big, which we've had with our other zombie books, where we had it's a 6x9, and you add on 6.125 by 9.25. That's the bleed. Well, it wasn't 6.125, it was 6.2 by 9.25. And just that small difference, going from 6.125 to 6.2, even though there wasn't anything wrong with it, because it was literally just an image, there wasn't even text on it, they kicked it back, because all the pages have to match. You can't have anything off. They'll kick it back to you, you'll make that adjustment. Now, the one thing that they don't do that I wish they would do is that they would address what's actually wrong. I have to call every time. They'll just say, hey, it was rejected. And they won't let me know. So I have to call, I have to look into this stuff, right? So as you're looking through this, none of these pages are messed up. You guys got to see some of the images we haven't shared yet. And it's looking good so far. So I'm going to stop it right here. I don't want to run in the end of the book. This has about 121, 122 pages. There it is, 121 for right now, which is going to be a little bit bigger. That is it. Hopefully that helps anybody that was wondering about that. I know it was a little bit longer, but just want to cover some of the stuff that we've learned through this process that we're looking for when we're formatting this specifically for Create Space. Hopefully this can help anybody else out though. So if you guys like the video, hit the like button for me. If you want to continue to follow along with all of our content, hit the subscribe button. If you actually want to follow us on Facebook or Instagram, I'm going to put links for those as well, so you can see some of the stuff that we're doing there with some of our future books as well, the zombie book series, this witch book that's about to come out, and some of the other exciting things that we're going to have coming out next year as well. Thanks for watching, everybody.